We're going to start with a more formal panel discussion. We have 4 panelists with us today that are going to share their stories on their first year in office. We're going to ask them some questions to kind of talk to us about, some of the challenges they faced and some of the successes that they had. And then we will also take questions from all of you as well. So I'm going to ask for you all to stay muted during the formal panel discussion. Feel free to still use the chat, but please stay muted during the first part of this. And then when we get to the audience Q&A, you can either ask questions through the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions that way, that is totally fine too. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Chesney, who's going to introduce our presenter or our panelists and kind of start the formal Q&A here.
Hi, I'm Chesney Leafblad. I'm chair of the IPAI Education Committee, and I had to recruit some of our participants today. So before I introduce them, thank you in advance for your willingness to prepare and be on this call and to be a resource for others that are in a position that you were in yourselves not too long ago. If I start from the beginning, I'm going to start with Lori Behringer. Now, these sessions are directed towards township assessors. Lori is an SA, a county assessor, but she has township assessors that report to her. And so what they need from a township assessor might look very different. She has that perspective that she's bringing today. Then we have Colette Davis. Now, Colette is a newer assessor in the county that I'm in. She's the Zion Township assessor. And she's been very innovative in terms of her approach to tackling that office and determining what she needs to move forward in the best manner. We have Derek Devers. Derek came in from being a deputy and then moving into the assessor role in a different township. So he's familiar with what things were like on the deputy side and then how that changes when you move into being the assessor. And then we also have Ken Harris. He is the DuPage Township. I'm sorry, Derek is in Moline Township out in Rock Island County. And then we have Ken Harris, and Ken came in not from being a deputy and was elected, and he jumped into being a township assessor with both feet. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say in his perspective as well. So we will go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do here is I'll cycle through each of the panelists with some questions. And if some of the other panelists, sometimes they might have something to add on to the person that I asked the question to, feel free to do so. And if you pop a question into the chat box, if it's relevant to what we're speaking about right now, I'll go ahead and add that question on. And if it's something that we want to look at later, we'll address it during the Q&A section. So I'm going to start with Lori. So my first question for you, Lori, is how did you get into this position? What was your background before this?
So thank you for allowing me to be on this panelist and to share my knowledge and experience with everyone. So I was appointed as the supervisor of assessments for Moultrie County in December of 2016. I had worked in the office about 2 years prior to being appointed, and the assessor prior to me passed away unexpectedly. And so that's what I kind of had to be put in before necessarily I felt like I was really ready to do it. So, and not the greatest moment, of the fact that she passed away and it was very sudden and that sort of thing. And then just trying to take over from that point. So
when you took that position, it was out without really any planning beforehand. You just had to step into the role and get it done. What were maybe some of the negative things that you encountered right off the bat from who used to be your fellow assessors?
So I can tell you that I actually had one township assessor that was getting ready to retire. He didn't want to run again. And because I was new and how unexpected it was, he decided to run another 4 years so that I wasn't having to worry about trying to help somebody new in that position as far as that goes, or could I get somebody in that position being in a small county? So I didn't really have, I don't recall having any sort of negative. Everybody was positive and very supportive. My other two township assessor, all of them at that time had lots of years of experience, so they were very helpful.
That's really great. We're going to move on. I have a question for Ken. For those of you that were elected, the results came out in April of the current year, but you didn't take office until January. What did you do to prepare for taking office?
I basically just stayed away as much as possible. But I did peek in. I knew that I had a span in there that I probably wouldn't be official until that January. So I met with a few staff. They actually reached out to me after the results came about, told me who they were and what they did. So I got some knowledge from that end as to what staff I had. Fortunately, I had a staff that's been here 32 years. So it eased me a little bit knowing that once I'm sworn in, I'll be able to have some experienced staff. So I did meet with the outgoing assessor. She gave me some advice. There was no hard feelings. I mean, it was just the results of an election. So I did read up on a little bit. I knew what I was going to be faced with. They told me a few contracts was expiring. So I had some inside knowledge to look over those and knowing that when I took office, I would have to address that. And also I knew that a budget was going to be due February 28th. So I knew once I was sworn in, I had to figure out what was going on with the finances and what expenses we had. And I was trying to learn a little bit about that as well through meeting minutes that was available online for the most part. So that's pretty much what I did. Just I peeked in. I knew I couldn't officially take over, and I know the staff was nervous and everything. So
when you actually took office for the first time, what was your initial focus on? You'd met with the staff, you had a little bit of a heads up from the outgoing assessor, which a lot of people don't have. So that's really encouraging that you had that type of interaction. But when you actually started, where did you start? Budget, staff meetings?
it was pretty much the budget. I knew I had to get a handle on that. I knew by statute I had to get that submitted to our township. And then in the first meeting of the first bill I had to approve was a $8,500 camera sister bill. So, and that didn't look too well going into my first meeting, but I had to explain that this was something that we needed, and the township board had to put them at ease. But yeah, it was pretty much the budget and the finances and what I dealt with.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you walked in the door and there was a lot that you were able to do. Can you walk us through your thought process in terms of how you prioritize what needs to happen when, and what your time frame is for some future projects that you're looking at?
Well, I knew the meeting dates of the township board. They expected a report from me as to what's happening with the assessor's office. In my background, I was a state employee for 32 years. And I pretty much did a lot of the budgeting and the fiscal responsibility. So I had an idea what I knew that I wanted to do and focus on. And I know you can't go over budget. So I didn't want to go over budget. So I had to figure out where we was at and where we was going from there. So pretty much the finances was the focus for me.
Gotcha. What suggestions do you have to someone that's in your position as a new assessor?
I would say just learn as much as you can. Hopefully, if you are elected or appointed, work with the staff, get to know them. Don't go in with any predetermined decisions. just learn and make sure you understand your job and what you've been trained to do with your training. So I would definitely recommend just communicating with your township board as well as the staff as to what to expect and from you and what you expect from them.
So thank you so much, Ken. One of the things that's important to remember as a township assessor, there are a significant number of people that you do need to communicate. And as Ken was just talking about, you need to communicate with your town board, give them reports. That's really important. He's communicated as well with his staff. And I'm going to move on to Colette, and I'm going to ask her about communicating with some other government bodies. And another format you need to communicate with are the taxing bodies. So Colette, do you have any suggestions about working with taxing bodies?
Yes, so good afternoon. Again, Colette Davis, Zion Township Assessor. I didn't put in the chat, I just thought about that. So I have been in the office since I was appointed in 2020 and then elected in 21. So the previous assessor retired, and that's how I was appointed first and then elected into the position. But one of the first things that I did when I got into office was to meet one-on-one with each of the taxing bodies in my township. And I also met with their council because I wanted to let them know, hey, I'm here. You know, if you have any questions, any concerns, anything, I want to build this relationship. Let's communicate, before we even get to, having to go to another level. I just wanted them to know that my door was open, and it's important to me that we were on the same page, or that we can have conversations about everything. Because to me, we're all working kind of towards the same thing. And I know that's not common for a lot of townships, a lot of outlooks that people have. But I had relationships with a lot of the taxing bodies because I volunteered a lot in the community. So I already knew them. And so, it was just adding another level or layer to our relationship. Like, hey, I just want to talk to you one-on-one and say, now that I'm in this role, please feel free. Let's make sure that we're working together towards the common goal. And I actually had a meeting with all of their council and said the same thing. Hey, before you throw that card in the hat, opposing anything, contact me. It may be something that I can give you clarification on, it may be something that,
Looks like Colette froze a little bit.
that they appreciated that. All those council was like, this is the first time that we've ever had a conversation like this with an assessor. And I was like, I think this is a good thing. So I'm going to say, great. Okay. So, and it's been good. They've actually continued to do that. If they have any questions, concerns, they will call me first. They will pull me aside. And in my township, one of the things that we have been doing as leaders is working together on all aspects, not just tax assessment, but working together on everything that we have going on in our township. We meet consistently. We have meetings with the community quarterly to give them updates, give them statuses, give them an opportunity for Q&A. So we've taken it, to another level in that way, but that's something that we're trying to do to get ourselves to where we want to be.
Colette, what's a big factor that allows you to be successful?
So, a couple of things. I believe you're only as good as your team. So, building that relationship with my team, pouring into my team. I met with them one-on-one as well. I wanted to see what their short-term, their long-term goals were. The main thing was understanding what they did, what role they played. and then allowing them the opportunity to share with me the things that they wanted to do and what I could do to help them to, be successful. And the other thing was, my fellow assessors, colleagues, just getting to know them, building relationships with them, because I know that I can't do this alone.
Lisa, did you have a question for?
You can talk to, and it says
Yeah,
my internet connection was unstable. Can you
it
guys hear
was.
me?
You were a little unstable.
Sorry.
On our end, you were just frozen. So I don't know what
Sorry.
happened on your end. Lisa,
Yeah.
you're up here in the same county with
Mhm.
Colette and I and Cindy. You had a question for?
I did have
Colette?
a question for Colette. Hi, Colette.
Hi.
So these community meetings that you hold quarterly, how well attended are they, and or how do you get people to come? Because we had one open meeting and it was not very well attended.
Well, each of the taxing bodies put it on their social media pages, their websites. We have a quarterly magazine in our township, and so we put everything that's happening, within the quarter in that magazine. And so we put a big ad in there. We sent out postcards to all residents, and it's just a small postcard that says community forum, date, time, location, would like to see you there. I think we even actually had an email address on there. So if they couldn't attend, they had questions that they wanted to be addressed, we could get that information and we would be able to address it. And then just by word of mouth, we, were charged to, tell the people in our circles and stuff as well, share it with them. So every and any way possible that we could do it, we got it out there.
And are all of the taxing bodies participating in that
That's
newsletter?
correct. That's correct. Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
really great, and it's really informative, because we used to have a newspaper, but then that folded or left, the community, and that was a big way that a lot of people knew of what was going on. So we wanted to have one central location for all things, in Zion Township, and so we got the quarterly magazine through the township office, the township supervisor's office, and we have a calendar that we can put all events on for everybody, and you can just, they could go on there and see what's going on. But then we had our articles for each taxing body has at least one page, and they can spotlight whatever they want on that page. For
Colette, could you, I'm going to move on to Derek now.
Okay.
Would you be able to pop that into the chat? So if anyone wants to go check that out, they've got the link to get them to that website.
Yeah, let me look it up. Yep, I'll look it up and give it to you guys.
All right, Derek, are you ready? Unmute, please. So we were talking with Colette. She, a lot of what she was talking about hinged on communication. Lori brought that up as well. Now, Derek, this is kind of a different situation. In your first year, you found out some of your CAMA data across your township had been loaded incorrectly. And once you've realized this error, how did you handle that?
It's still ongoing. Luckily I have total 9,387 parcels, not like some of you guys have much more than that. But anyway, I determined which properties were wrong. For instance, someone loaded all the 1 stories with attics. The same square foot on the ground floor went into the attic square footage. So I ran a scratch pad and found that. But here's what I've also found is they weren't really in compliance with the 2012 CAMA cost tables that were in at the time. So I've had to go through and start working on those. And right now, me and my staff of 2, we have about 3,000 left to do. But I was talking with the supervisor of assessments, and he's like, well, you got to work with what you have. And of course, you own the data. Once you become the assessor, it don't matter who did what ahead of you, you own that data. So I had to start just fixing it neighborhood by neighborhood. But then I kind of got myself into a mental quandary. Well, am I out of compliance? Because you're supposed to apply things across your township uniformly, but there is no way to fix it all at one time. So I just had to break it into pieces that I could handle. And we're fixing this neighborhood. So we're fixing the square footage on the cutoffs. We're fixing the attic square foot. And we're just working around that way. Now, here's the downside. This office hasn't really gone out to properties in a very long time. So I'm very frustrated that this is my second year and we haven't gone out ourselves yet, but I want to get this data fixed before I start putting new data on top of my bad data. Because I feel that would just be a total nightmare. So my goal is to finish cleaning up this data, and then hopefully this summer get back in that rotation where we need to go out, once every 4 years like we're supposed to.
So you've heard so far from each of our panelists, so you've gotten to know them a little bit. We are going to work through some of the main questions. Amanda was kind enough to kind of put everything that you might want to ask yourself as a new assessor into a document. So I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna ask the first question here. So we heard a little bit about their backgrounds and what they actually did, but if this is you, I am a new assessor, where do I start? Some of the suggestions that came through are visit local offices and see how they do things. A lot of what's been said regarding communication, to piggyback on that, you also have networking. We are all doing this together, and each person needs to play their role. It's good to understand what comes before you, or what came before you, what comes after you, who's doing the same thing you are. A couple of you put in the chat box that you're solo assessors. Well, Pat and Jennifer, you should be sending direct messages to each other and doing a little bit of networking, because there is a large subset of assessors that are solo in their office. And there's going to be unique things about being in that position, that those of us that have staff or are part of a staff, it's going to look a little differently. So visit other local offices and see how they do things, and network with people that are in similar situations. And another thing someone added here is the top priority when they first began was to read the property tax code and tab places that you knew people would be asking questions. I'm pretty sure that was you, right, Lori?
Yeah.
So instead of waiting to see what was going to happen, because she had a little bit of a background, she anticipated, all right, these are probably going to be some issues. I want to do the research and kind of know where I'm going to direct people now. So that's the first question. I'm a new assessor, where do I start? Colette started by kind of gauging who she had in terms of her staff members and reaching out with the taxing body. Derek, you started by analyzing your data. Ken started with his budget. It's going to look different for everyone, but each of those things are very important. Your budget, your staff, those are all your resources, right? So taking stock of what your data looks like and who's working for you and how they're competent and how they can help you. Those are all good places to start. Any other questions on our number, where do I start? I'm a new assessor question. Okay. Next question. How do I get myself organized? So a lot of what we do in this industry is guided by time frames, right? Like Ken knew he had to get his budget in by February 28th. You have to get your books in by a different date. There's dates for CEs. There's dates for annual meetings. This is a very date-driven industry, right? So finding a timeline and setting up a calendar, putting deadlines on there, especially for tasks that are only accomplished once a year, that is a really, really, really great place to start. What are my deadlines? Having those deadlines in place is also going to help you prioritize the work that needs to be done. Now, Derek wishes he could have stood there and just fixed all that right away. I know you do. You wanted to just fix it. But then there's reality, right? Reality is there's 3 of you, and that you still have to answer the phone call. There's still other things you have to do. You can only devote so much time and energy towards that data cleanup project, even though in an ideal world, you'd fix it right away. Having your must-meet deadlines laid out in your calendar is going to help you allocate your time and resources properly. So at the last minute, you're like, oh crap, that's due tomorrow and I didn't do it. So that's really important, making sure that you abide by those statutory deadlines. Another example here, make checklists. Some of your IPAI courses have checklists. I imagine as we move forward, more and more IPAI course content will have what Amanda likes to call job aids as well that have been put together. So anytime you find that type of document, it's great to grab it. Another place that you can start is reaching out to people that are in your county or in neighboring counties to see what they have in terms of their checklists. You might not keep it the same, but if you grab a few, you can see what you need to copy from them and create your own list. And make instruction binders of how to do each project step by step as you do them. Colette, I know that you took on a huge initiative when you started in that office with putting together some of these things. Can you tell us like how detailed that manual is?
Yes, I was trying to get myself off of mute. It's a very detailed manual. I actually had my staff to play a big role in helping to compile that, because what I found was that each person just did their one little piece and nobody knew what the other person did. And I was like, good gracious, well, if someone gets sick for an extended period of time, this is not going to be good. So I needed to have a backup plan. So that's kind of where it started, as well as just making sure that there was one central location for all that information. And so I had them to, map out exactly what they did step by step. And then as we went along, as I was, inquiring and learning and pulling reports and all of that kind of stuff, and just kind of getting in my mind, for me, I have to have a visual gauge of everything that needs to be done in a certain order, even though I know nothing is ever the same. And it's, it's different things that change over the course of the year. And it's not like a true dead set time, but if I could at least frame it out, that helped me. So that was another inspiration for it. And so I just had everything mapped out step by step for each piece of the pie or each piece of the puzzle, each process that we do, and compiled it on and put it on our SharePoint drive, so that all of those in the office would have access to it at any time. And then if there's any updates that need to be made, I make those accordingly when things change. But everyone has that as a point of reference.
So as a joke, one of the conference sessions we've looked at on the IPAI State Conference Committee over and over again is when your office wins the lottery. And it's a joke, but my office, we all play the lottery together. And so what's going to happen when we win the lottery? And I know the next time is the time we're going to win, and we all leave. Like, who's going to walk in, and are they going to know what to do? Okay. So that helps you, because a lot of what we do, we don't do the same thing at every point in the year. Our jobs are very cyclical. We are not doing the same thing in March that we're doing in October. So if it's something you only do once a year, you think you'll remember, but a year later, you're going to be glad to have step-by-step notes written down. I've been doing this 20 years. And the first time I start a task again, I go through my step-by-step notes, and then you get in the swing of it and you don't need them as much. But I promise you, a year later, you're going to be glad you have your notes. Another question you might want to ask yourself, and thank you to Lori for putting this together, is what resources do I have? Now, your resources as a township versus a county assessor are going to look very different. If you're a county assessor, your resources are going to be, she mentioned IACO, which is the Illinois Association of County Officials. Maybe your county board, your state's attorney is going to look pretty different. There are numerous associations that are available to you. IDOR is a resource, IAAO, IPAI, area meetings, vendors, websites. Okay, so you have all of these different resources. But one of the really important things that you need to know is who to ask what question. So one of the questions that you might have are timeframes. Well, if you're a township assessor, who might you go to with questions about timeframes on when your work is due? Lori?
Well, I'm going to say IDOR, you would go to that, or your public or your property tax code is going to have that sort of stuff. And then to back it up with Illinois Department of Revenue, and then potentially other township assessors that's been doing it for a long time, reaching
Well,
out.
if I'm a township assessor, my first call is you. My county
okay.
assessor. You're
Well,
the
that's you.
easiest, you know, that's where you might go as a county, but as a township assessor, you're going to want to look at what's been laid out in terms of your county assessor saying, here's the cutoff for CEs. You know, here's when I need these exemption applications in, and this is the correct format for them. So as a township assessor, a significant number of your questions are going to be answered by your county assessor. And it's incredibly important, and I believe statutorily mandated, Adrienne's on this call, I think, that you attend the annual meeting as put forward by your county assessor if you are a township assessor. And that's where a lot of that information is laid out. If you're a township assessor, another resource would be TOI as well. So they have a lot of information about budgeting and that type of information. IPAI website has a resources tab with a significant amount of information. But let's say you have a question about, you know, how to add a finished basement or an extra bathroom on a property in your CAMA system. Okay, who don't you want to call? Don't call Adrienne.
No.
Don't call me unless you're on the same system. So sometimes that's going to have to be other users of your CAMA system, because this is where it gets different. If you're using a different system, things could input it in a different way. So you need to talk with someone else who's using your system, or you might want to speak directly to the vendor. Derek?
I want to say something too. You need to also, if you're going to enter all your garage unders a particular way in your CAMA system, you need to almost write a procedure so everyone in your office where it picks up that data and does it the same way, because everyone thinks differently, and there's little tweaks which could really change the value in the end when you're running the values. So you want to be sure to you know, I don't know, come up with a nice thick book that tells you how to do most of the jobs.
And real quickly, we are going to have a new assessor training that focuses on CAMA systems, where each system will have someone in there speaking to it later on. I don't know what month it is, but later on this year. So that is on schedule. So it's really important to think about what question do you have and who is the correct person to answer it as well. Jane, you asked about an assessor book. There is an assessor book. I don't know where you get a copy of it. I've got it right here. It was published in 2007 by TOI. So I don't know if they're doing a new book or not, but
you can still get it.
Definitely need to be directed to TOI. And we're going to move on and talk about what struggles have been encountered. So any of our panelists, where have you struggled in terms of taking over a new office, and what were the solutions, or, you know, how did you struggle through? Raise your hand, I'll call on whoever. Oh, well, just the dream team, no struggles, I guess. I don't believe you.
I did raise my hand, it didn't work.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay, we'll start with Derek.
Sometimes the struggle is employees, because especially when you have super long-term employees, they're very used to doing the data one way, and to try to change that, it's like pulling teeth. You just got to persistently just keep working at it, and sooner or later, I try to I'm a thinker where I think six months to a year down the road, I don't look at the short picture. But I found that I had to reiterate to my employees why this data is important to go here, like so they can see the big picture down the road. I describe this job as a big jigsaw puzzle. They do their pieces of the puzzle. I see the picture. I work on it at the end and get the value. If they don't do their part of the puzzle, I can't see the whole picture.
And that all falls back to that topic of communication, right?
Correct.
Which is very important, communicating with them, how important that is. Lori, what has been your struggle?
The more that's going to go with township assessors that you might run into is one of my was anything that I changed procedure wise, like changing one of the things I changed was the leasehold exemptions. I also changed board of review rules, something along those lines that's going to affect the taxpayers. I would get pushback, phone calls, people coming in. Why did you do it this way? We've been doing it for 20 years this way. And I will tell you, sometimes just having the response of I'm new and I see it with different eyes, therefore I'm feeling like I'm trying to make the office more efficient by the way I've changed it here would help calm them down and realize, but that was some of the pushback at the beginning until they recognized why you were doing it or something like that. So some of the procedures you changed just that's going to affect the taxpayers in that sort of deal.
That's very true. So I know I've been saying the same word over and over again, but what you've done in terms of that struggle is you have solved it through communication, which is of the utmost importance. The qualifying series talks to you about assessing, right? It only gets you so far, but the reality is in order to do your job well, first you have to do it well, but you also have to explain it to other people. So it's a very important part of what we do. Colette, did you have another struggle you were going to mention?
No, I was going to see somewhat along the same lines of what everyone else is saying, just processes and procedures.
Gotcha.
If someone's used to doing it because they've been in their comfort zone of doing it that particular way, it's, change has been hard for some people in that way. But when you help them to see the bigger picture, and they see that the same energy they used to do it one way, you can use that same energy and do it the more efficient way, and it's not really hurting anything, it's just learning a new way of doing it, then it didn't hurt so bad. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, sorry for the pushback, but until they get used to the new process.
Right, you're looking for that buy-in.
Right. Exactly.